However, his mastery over this was still inferior to Dagmar's. He felt his soul sense being restricted from spreading too far by a weird body of air. He couldn't even span the 100 meters in his immediate surroundings, let alone find Dagmar and Acer across the whole of Pandemonium. Thankfully, Brian's not in Pandemonium. Otherwise, he would have taken the chance to sneak attack one of us already, he thought as he slowly marched towards the depths of Pandemonium. Meanwhile, near the center of Pandemonium, Daka really is impressive. He was barely affected by the fog. I guess my master was right. The outer defenses might work against normal gods, but not those at the Overgod realm, Gilbert said. Seeing Daka shake off the effects of the fog from the magical mirror and break through a few barriers within Pandemonium, he felt rather impressed. Every expert that reaches the Overgod realm are terrifying beings. Daka, Dagmar, and Acer, being hegemons of the god hunters, are people who have emerged to stand atop a mountain of corpses. We can't afford to underestimate people like that, Ballins said with a serious look. After a moment, he looked to Han Hao and said, with him barging in so forcefully, I worry that most of the formations won't be able to stop him. Do you think we should lead him to this spot instead? He pointed at an area that looked like a small hill. The 5 elite zombies, seeing Ballins point at the spot, seemed a little taken aback. However, they didn't speak a word and only turned to Han Hao. As the leader of the fringe-dwelling god hunters, Han Hao was well trusted by Strathome, Phoebe, and the others of the House of Han, despite not spending much time with them. Han Hao looked at the spot with a contemplative gaze. After a moment of thought, he said, "All right, I'll make a trip there myself to lead him there." Han Jin, surprised, said, "Big brother, let someone else do it. Over there is where the most terrifying formation of Pandemonium is deployed. Father had warned us that the formation doesn't differentiate friend from foe. Anyone that enters the area will be attacked indiscriminately, and the formation won't ever stop working as long as there is a sign of life in it and the energy within Pandemonium hasn't been used up." "It's fine," he said. He didn't say anything else before turning to leave. "Wait!" Though Scarlet didn't really seem too worried at first, she felt something was off after listening to Ballins and Han Jin. Han Hao turned to her and said, "I will be fine." He left right after without delay. Just as he left, through the magical mirror, everyone noticed Daka activating his divine energy to the fullest, forming orbs of destruction to be sent all over the place indiscriminately. Some of the formations were more or less ruined by the chaotic bombardment, while others could barely operate at full capacity. Unlike Daka, Dagmar and Acer had entered Pandemonium with utmost caution, despite how brave-sounding they were initially. They were so careful that they only took small steps, unlike Daka, who destroyed almost everything he came across. These two are huge threats as well. They didn't go all out because they still didn't have a grasp of the situation before. Once they leave the fog and are no longer under its influence, they'll definitely go blasting away at everything in Pandemonium like Daka, Ballins calmly said. "Don't worry. They'll soon encounter the infernal Psychodemon formation. The two of them will be held back there for some time at least. Once they leave it, the Skysunder lightning formation awaits. So, there's no need to worry about the two of them," Han Jin whispered to Ballins. "Great." Ballin's voice was raised a little higher to draw the attention of the others. "Everyone, let's get preparing. Once Han Hao leads Daka into that place, we'll immediately leave Pandemonium through the underground tunnel. The three's subordinates are waiting outside, and I want to use our household's might to deal a heavy blow to them while the three are in here." "Of course," Sanguis loudly said. "Since those god hunters have a death wish, we should oblige. Sanguis, instruct the guards to get ready. However, wait for my signal. Only bring them into the fight through the underground tunnel after I say it's clear, all right?" Ballins warned, knowing how reckless Sanguis could be sometimes. "Don't worry, I know what to do," Sanguis said before impatiently leaving with Gilbert. Within the valley, all sorts of formations were covered in fog. Han Hao flew past them like a wraith armed with his bone spear. A few demon generals stealthily flew out from his bone spear and snuck up to Daka, who was destroying everything in the distance, to monitor his every move. Han Hao had memorized all the formations and energy barriers Andrina had deployed along the way thanks to his impeccable memory. He quickly sped towards Daka. An insidious aura was present all across Pandemonium. Whenever the formations were activated, the killing intent they radiated would cause those within it to feel a chill down their spine, which would also affect the energy within their bodies. However, Han Hao didn't hate this place. Instead, he found it rather comfortable. The environment was ideal for his cultivation of demonic arts. His bone spear swayed about in his hand and shot out a dark beam from time to time, all the while an eerie wail emanated from it, though it was so soft that one wouldn't pick it up unless one really listened for it. Gradually, he arrived at the location Ballins had talked about. He could already feel the danger as he approached. The demon generals that he sent out made sure to avoid that area, and even the countless souls contained within the bone spear seemed to want to leave the area too. You may go anywhere you want within Pandemonium, but you'll have to be on your utmost care at one place. Even you shouldn't enter it. That place will destroy anything that enters it regardless if it's friend or foe. Feeling the fear coming from the souls in the bone spear, Han Hao recalled Han Shu's warning to him before he left. He stood still at the edge of the area without taking a single step in. He gave it some thought before pushing the spear into the ground by his feet as he infused some odd runes and energy into it. He then let go. The bone spear sank slowly into the ground until only one small part of it was exposed. It then began to let out a gray smoke. After some hesitation, Han Hao left empty-handed and charged past the various formations back to where Daka was. Soon, he was there and he immediately sent a surge of soul energy rumbling towards him. All of a sudden, Daka felt his head hurt midway through his rampage and immediately noticed Han Hao's presence. The physically tough Daka was a little weak towards soul attacks, so the full-powered soul energy strike Han Hao used was enough to make Daka feel his head splitting with pain. He hurriedly stopped his wanton destruction and focused his attention on resisting the soul attack. Just as he was doing so, he noticed that the soul energy that permeated his consciousness had vanished the next instant. Not far from him, Han Hao looked a little panicked as he attempted to flee. HMPH, you've come to die, have you not? Daka smirked and couldn't wait to give chase. He was not a cultivator of the Edict of Death, and therefore, even if Han Hao had mastered the Quintessence Shard's power, he'd still be immune to its effects. That's why, while Dagmar was afraid of Han Hao, Daka wasn't. Chapter 958, Unrestricted Access, GDK 958. Unrestricted access, every person that managed to cultivate to the Overgod realm was incredibly powerful, and Daka was no exception. Han Hao's soul tremor attack couldn't really deal any real harm to him, for he managed to easily dispel the soul attack by focusing his attention. Unable to disable Pandemonium's defenses, despite having wantonly destroyed many of the formations, Daka chose to hunt down Han Hao instead. His mind steeled with resolve. He was worried there wouldn't be anyone there to guide or welcome him. Now that Han Hao had showed up, there was no way he would let him leave just like that. Daka followed behind Han Hao fearlessly and no longer attacked any stone pillars he saw. He focused on chasing down Han Hao instead. "It'll be fine, right?" Stratham said worriedly as he watched it from the magical mirror. Ballins seemed calm as always, as if he wouldn't panic and try to escape even if the sky was to crumble. He watched Daka chase down Han Hao through the mirror and said in an uncertain voice, "I don't know either. But I bet Senior Brother has explained how dangerous that place is to him. I believe he's at least confident enough to return after bringing Daka there. Hope it'll work out. Otherwise, I don't know how we'll be held accountable for this," Stratham said with a bitter smile. He knew how deep the relationship between Han Shu and Han Hao was. If the latter really fell in Pandemonium, Han Shu would no doubt be filled with anger, and no one in the chamber would want to face his wrath. "He'll be fine, definitely." Though Ballins sounded certain, he actually felt a little ambivalent about it. "Look," Phoebe cried and pointed at the magical mirror. "He's gone in." Ballins, Stratham and the rest ceased talking and looked at where she was pointing at, all tense with suspense and anticipation. After the various defenses in Pandemonium were set up, Han Shu had informed them about it so that they didn't accidentally enter these dangerous formations themselves. The spot they were looking at was the Sky Annihilation Formation, which none of the members of the House of Han should ever approach once it was activated. Those that did would no doubt die. Han Shuo had made sure to repeat his warning more than a couple of times, and made sure to bring up the formation's danger whenever he briefed them about pandemonium, without exception. Han Hao was now standing still at the outer edge of the formation. All of a sudden, 9 bolts of ferocious lightning came launching towards him like an unstoppable force of nature, as if it would completely annihilate Han Hao's soul. Endless amounts of hatred condensed and formed into 9 towering mountains that hurtled towards him, each as powerful as a full-force strike of an overgod. The ground was nowhere to be seen, having been replaced by an endless dark abyss. A pulling force similar to gravity could instantly be felt. It was so powerful that Han Hao seemed to be unable to resist it as it dragged him towards the depths. The forces of lightning, mountains, and gravity all targeted him clearly. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to escape the attacks no matter how he dodged, and that was only with him stepping into the outer edges of the formation. Just as he was about to block the incoming attacks as he continued his descent, he noticed a figure enter the abyss from the outside. Elated, he immediately gave up on blocking the 3 attacks, choosing to unleash all the power contained within his trump card in an instant. Outside the Sky Annihilation formation, the part of the bone spear that poked out of the ground shone brightly. One talon after another sprouted from the spear itself. All of a sudden, the negative energies that festered in pandemonium seemed to be drawn towards the spikes that just appeared on the spear. Before long, a pillar of light roughly as broad as a human zipped into the range of the formation, to form a path that reached Han Hao as he fell towards the very bottom of the abyss. His eyes brightened before he jumped into the column of light. All of a sudden, the column quickly narrowed itself as it receded towards the surface. The moment Daka entered the Sky Annihilation formation, he suddenly noticed that his Edict of Destruction was heavily affected. That area seemed to have changed the laws governing destruction in an instant. The divine energy of destruction contained within his body grew more chaotic, making it impossible for him to form the orbs of destruction even though it used to be effortless for him. Not only that, the powerful lightning bolts and force from the crushing mountains, as well as the gravity that tugged at him from the abyss's depths, was certainly felt by him. The killing intent and hatred that were essential to the attacks greatly disturbed his peace of mind. At that moment, Han Hao used his bone spear to quickly leave the abyss. Daka finally seemed to realize he had fallen for his trap and forced his destruction energy to stabilize before desperately propelling himself upwards to escape. Wham! Even though he felt almost no resistance as he entered the abyss, any attempt to ascend felt like it would be met with the combined weight of tens of thousands of formless mountains pressing down on him. There wasn't a single way for him to break through that obstacle, especially with his unstable power. Phew! Han Hao finally managed to leave the Sky Annihilation formation. He drew his bone spear out of the ground, and it returned to its usual form almost immediately, looking no different than it did before. "He's back out," Bollins cheered with relief. While he was the one who asked Stratham to calm down, he wasn't any bit as confident as the latter that Han Hao would be able to escape. "Wonderful." Stratham cheerfully took a swig of booze. "Now that Daka has been trapped, our job just got much easier. Dagmar and Acer will have many other formations waiting for him. No matter how careful they are, they'll never be able to avoid them. I'm guessing they'll need at least 10 days to make their way out." Ballin's gaze calmed as he said, "It's about time we launched a counterattack. I'll inform Sanguis, Gilbert, and the others about it. The God Hunters outside are now leaderless, and they're not our match." They cheered as they prepared to face the God Hunters with a light heart. Han Shuo and Wasir zipped towards pandemonium at full speed. After Wasir heard about the Daka trio's huge loss, he felt even more respect for Han Shuo now, though he didn't make it a point to tell him about it. The way he saw it, Han Shuo was undisputedly superior to Tyre, the leading one of the 5 sovereign, both in terms of personal power and his team's might. On the way, one question constantly weighed on Wasir's mind. Why didn't Han Shuo seem worried at all about the impending battle? Where did his confidence come from? No matter what, the 5 sovereigns of the Fringe wouldn't be enough to take on the God Hunter Alliance. After all, they were just 5 overgods, while the Alliance had far more. Not only did the number of experts in the Alliance greatly outnumber that of the Fringe, their strengths were definitely far superior too. No matter who one asked, the Fringe didn't seem to stand a chance against the God Hunter Alliance. Wasier had made preparations to leave the fringe with his subordinates before the battle began. Had it not for Han Xiuo's assurance that Glacial Peak wouldn't suffer one bit throughout the battle, he wouldn't have stubbornly remained. Brian, why do you think Tyre, Log, and Asura stayed to fight this bloody battle? He decided a direct approach at questioning would be better. Tyre and Log want to use this chance to control the fringe. The two of them definitely don't have any kind intentions, so they must have some sort of hidden trump card. As for Asura, to be frank, I just don't really understand his motives. However, he definitely has his own agenda. Perhaps he'll do something that surprises, Han Xiu replied after some thought. Ever since you came to the fringe, Asura has tried to get on your good side. Why, then, did you choose to cooperate to work with me instead of him? This was something that bothered him so much, yet he wasn't able to figure out why. Asura, Han Xiu smiled. He's definitely been trying to butter me up. Yet, what did that end up causing? A fight with Salas, a grudge with Tyre and Log, as well as a huge fight with you. And what exactly did he risk? Nothing but one sovereign shop and the chance to appear stronger than Salas. He shook his head and continued, he's far too ambitious. I don't dare to get too close to him nor let him know about my plans. I worry that he'll mess me up at the crucial moment, and I won't be able to do anything about it. He is someone you can't easily figure out indeed, Wasier agreed after some pondering. Meanwhile, the person they were talking about was now outside Pandemonium with a group of remnants. The forces of the House of Han, led by Ballins, Sanguis, and Gilbert, were killing off the god hunters that invaded their territory. The enemies were mercilessly crushed before the remnants scampered off in shambles. Asura looked like he had just been a part of the great battle. His men's hands were blood-stained, and many had to be supported to remain upright. Asura ordered, "Help the House of Han defeat the god hunters." Chapter 959, Who Could You Even Kill? Chapter 959, Who Could You Even Kill? Without the support of the Daka trio, the god hunters were completely not the match of the soldiers of the House of Han. Their slaughter continued on without an end in sight. Rose, Ramen, Sanguis, Zavik, and Ballins, the elites of the House of Han, took part in the chaotic battle. Even Han Hao's subordinates, be they members of the Han household guard or his personal subordinates, using demonic combat formations, worked in tandem to fight the god hunters. The invaders were completely outmatched. The moment Asura arrived with his own men, it only served to accelerate the god hunters' demise. They had no choice but to escape rather than waiting for Daka and the rest to return to help them. Back then, they had already suffered a huge loss from Han Hao at the Three Mountain Valley, with most of them have not yet recovered from the injuries they suffered on that day. Faced with the fearsome fighters, it was as if they had forgotten that their leaders were not with them as they fled the place. As they ran, the warriors of the Han household gave chase. Using their familiarity with the terrain, they were able to ambush the fleeing god hunters at many corners before dealing them another heavy blow. Yet, this should have been a flawless victory for them, had they suffered no incident along the way. The warriors repelling the invaders had thought themselves to far outpower their enemies and charged in recklessly without regard to the risks. Soon, they found that the initially confused god hunters seemed to muster their courage to fight back. One after another, they lashed out like cornered mad dogs. Ballins, Sanguis, and Gilbert were fighting at the very front and were shocked to see the change. They didn't understand why the desperately fleeing god hunters would suddenly counter with a renewed fervor without regard for their own losses. They were obviously not a match for the warriors of the Han household, yet they seemed to have gotten newfound confidence to fight back. What was the source of their renewed fighting spirit? Ballins felt that something was off. Before the god hunters could approach, he ordered, "Head back." "Why? They've come to die and we're merely granting their wishes." "Haha, I worry that we won't have enough of them to kill," Gilbert said as he gave Ballins a curious stare. "Something's fishy," he replied. "Everyone head back now." "Gilbert, go!" Sanguis yelled the moment he saw Gilbert about to talk back. "There's reinforcements. I can feel lots of killing intent approaching us." Gilbert, now genuinely startled, no longer wasted time talking and retreated as he cried out, "Everyone head back. Stop pursuing, it's a darn trap." The moment the fighters heard Gilbert's warning, they immediately turned back to whence they came. At that moment, many experts suddenly appeared from behind the fleeing god hunters. It was plain to see from the color of their outfits that they weren't the subordinates of Daka, Dagmar, or Aser, though they seemed just as bloodthirsty. One thing was without question, they were also god hunters. They're the ones pursuing Asura. Darn it, didn't he just say that he managed to lose them? Sanguis snapped when he took a look behind him. Thanks to their timely reaction, their subordinates might be spared. While the leaders might have survived the clash, the other normal warriors of the Han household would have perished from the sudden onslaught that would have happened. The thought of the mere possibility of that happening caused Sanguis to feel like cursing Asura for inadvertently leading those people to Pandemonium. The least he could do was make sure he wasn't being followed before coming to Pandemonium. "Quick, run!" Ballins yelled even louder as he felt a huge presence from behind. There was definitely one hegemon among the pursuers. It only took them one look for them to tell that they were no match for the new invaders. All of a sudden, a gentle breeze caused a person to manifest. With a gentle smile, the hegemon Miller created a wind barrier in front of Sanguis, Gilbert, and Ballins. 3 men ahead of Sanguis couldn't stop in time and rammed into a barrier, only to be repelled. None of them managed to barge their way through. All of a sudden, a ferocious tornado, made from the divine energy of an overgod, formed near them. The air itself became the sharpest of blades that flayed the skin and flesh of the warriors before tearing their bodies apart in an instant. Sanguis's eyes turned bloodshot. He drew his blood-colored sword that let out a beam 5 meters long, making the air smell of blood. Fresh blood seemed to flow around the sword itself, making it seem even more sinister. Sanguis's body turned into a bloody glow before fusing with his sword and piercing towards Miller's barrier at full speed. With the sound of tearing, a large hole was opened in the barrier that could let 3 people pass through at once. Sanguis was the first one to go through it, with Ballins and Gilbert following behind. Some of their subordinates were quick to notice the opening and went in after, escaping the wind barrier. However, some dozens of others weren't so lucky. Before they were able to escape, they noticed the hole had closed up. This time around, the barrier was reinforced with even denser wind elements, completely sealing off their escape route. HMPH. Miller's expression was one of surprise, having not anticipated Sanguis's piercing through his barrier. Though he had put together the barrier casually on the spot, it still wasn't something that could be easily damaged. Sanguis's ability to channel all the force of momentum into a sharp point to be unleashed with the shortest impact time for unparalleled destruction broadened Miller's horizons. With an even thicker layer of wind element reinforcing the barrier, Miller continued his assault using wind blades on the warriors that were left within it, turning them into bloody paste. He then turned into a gust of wind to flow through the barrier he made effortlessly to catch up with Sanguis and the rest. "What about the rest?" Gilbert roared the moment he left the barrier. Ballins didn't say a word. His expression was deathly cold. He knew that there were some warriors that couldn't make it. Fighters of their caliber definitely wouldn't last a few seconds against Miller. Gilbert's worry was unwarranted. They were sure to have died by now. Seeing Ballins remain silent, Gilbert could already guess what had happened to them. His eyes reddened as he decided to turn back and put up a desperate fight. All of a sudden, his body stopped in midair. It seemed like he was no longer going to retreat. "Grab him," Ballins told Sanguis before he immediately stretched his hand out as well. He and Sanguis each managed to grab one of his arms before they flew back towards Pandemonium, ignoring Gilbert's protests. "Little fellow, you have a really unique power. Haha, stay and let us investigate what exactly it is," Miller said from behind them. All of a sudden, he surrounded the 3 of them with another wind barrier that couldn't even be compared with the one from before. The moment Sanguis saw the barrier, he immediately turned back to glare at Miller. He knew that this time around, he wouldn't be able to breach the barrier, so he didn't bother to waste any effort on it. It would be more productive to fight Miller. Even if he couldn't kill him, he could at least hurt him somewhat if he fought hard enough. The moment Ballins and Gilbert saw Sanguis give up on trying to escape, they knew that they were in a crucial juncture. It was as if they left the panic they had from before behind as they focused their hateful glares on Miller. The other warriors stood quietly behind the 3 of them. Not one of them showed the slightest hint of weakness or fear. They seemed completely calm, as if death was nothing but a discomforting inconvenience for them that they had already prepared for. Miller wasn't in a rush to attack. He made sure to take in the looks on their faces before he praised, as expected of elite troops like yours. It's no wonder Dhaka and the rest would crumble just like that. Well, now you have a choice to make. Either you surrender your souls immediately and swear allegiance to me, or be killed by me right this instant. Who could you even kill? Someone called from the depths of the area. A tear suddenly appeared beneath Ballin's as a grim-looking Han Hao emerged with his bone spear. He glanced at Miller before turning to Ballin's and the rest. You have no business here. Go back to pandemonium from beneath. Haha, I've heard much of your reputation, Han Hao. You sure do seem like you live up to it, Miller said as he clapped excitedly. However, do you think you'll be able to protect them? You're free to try. Han Hao focused his full attention on Miller, pointing his bone spear at him as he would a great foe. The 7 bone spurs on his back also began to shake heavily. Chapter 960, We're Not Leaving. GDK 960, We're Not Leaving. Han 2 was no doubt coming from the crack in the ground. However, Ballins, Gilbert and Sanguis merely gave it a passing glance without the slightest intention of leaving through it. You guys should go, Ballins said, pointing at the warriors behind him. They had been trained most often by Ballins and would never hesitate to do as he ordered. Without hesitation, they jumped into the crack in the ground. Miller's smile receded as a gentle breeze came blowing out of his palm. A barrier formed over the crack in the ground, and the warriors that had entered were sent bouncing back out. If I say nobody's leaving, I mean it. Miller approached Han Hao menacingly, his every step causing a small twister to form, eventually covering the whole area. Han Hao squinted as the 7 bone spurs shot out of his back towards the wind barrier over the crack. With a loud crash, a hole was torn on the barrier. Go now, Ballins yelled. The warriors quickly jumped into the crack, leaving not one of their own behind. This time around, there was nothing to stop them. You 3 too, go, Han Hao said without even turning back. A red glow shone in his purple eyes as he glared at the approaching Miller. Specters came out of the bone spear in his hand and gathered around him. Han Hao, we're not leaving, Gilbert stubbornly said. We can't watch you die for our sake. If we're to die, let all of us do it together. Ha ha ha, well said. You should all die together. Miller smirked and lashed out without warning. Strong gusts of wind shot out like humongous torrents out of nowhere towards the 3 of them, completely enveloping them. With a stretch of his hand, he made a sharp, saw-toothed blade with the cold winds and slashed with it. The blade spun at high speeds and covered the whole of Han Hao. The sudden surge of Miller's power put his abilities as an overgod of wind on full display. Only those on the same level as he was could stand a chance against it. Those weaker than him would be trapped by the strong winds without question. How dare small fries like you act so arrogantly? Miller mocked. He didn't consider Ballins and the rest his match at all. Even Sanguis, who had breached the barrier he made, only merited the slightest bit of caution. He didn't think Sanguis could really fight him on even footing. Though he continued to mock them arrogantly, Miller was actually paying close attention to Han Hao, who was currently being entrapped by the saw-toothed wind blade. As far as he was concerned, Han Hao was the only troublesome one among them, though even then he was someone that Miller didn't have to use his full force to fight. All of a sudden, Miller's expression suddenly shifted. What? Loud wails and cries of wraiths could be heard coming from Han Hao's direction as a gigantic silhouette formed. The figure clawed and bit at the surroundings, ravaging everything in its path. The blade formed from Miller's wind energy was immediately shattered into countless fragments after the figure bit down onto it, causing the wind element that comprised it to disperse. They could never form together into the solid blade again. At the same time, Han Hao's bone spear opened its wide, ghastly mouth, resembling a hellish dragon that had climbed out of its prison in the abyss for the first time in eons. It emanated endless hatred and killing intent as it closed in for a bite. Miller's expression was grave. Now, there was no longer the slightest hint of underestimation coming from him. He now knew that Han Hao was a match on his caliber. All of a sudden, Miller's body began to turn rapidly, causing a large tornado to form with him in the center. The tornado stretched all the way to the sky and covered a 10-kilometer area. All the flora and rocks were crushed and absorbed into the tornado. Miller was now at the eye of the storm, continuously supplying energy to his colossal creation that threatened to swallow all. Not only did it pull whatever it could into it, it even managed to pull Han Hao's bone spear towards it. Sounds of crying and howling could be heard from within the tornado. The moment the bone spear entered it, the tornado began to slow down, as if it was diverting all its power to move a mountain. "Go, now!" Han Hao cried as he sent out his bone spur to disperse the wind energy that bound them. Ballins and the rest were quite shocked at the development. "I'm still not his match yet, so I can only hold him back for a bit. I can't defeat him," Han Hao explained before he charged into the crack himself. Ballins and the rest no longer hesitated and followed behind. If Miller was someone even Han Hao admitted to not being able to defeat, the three of them wouldn't even stand a chance. There was nothing else they could do but run. The moment they entered the ground, the crack above them closed back up. There wasn't a single trace of it remaining. At the same time, the bone spear Han Hao tossed into the tornado suddenly weighed much more than before and sank into the ground. One after another, earth spikes as large as hills filled the tornado, spreading out the force it channeled to the point the tornado could no longer sustain the spinning. The bone spear fell straight onto one of the hills before disappearing beneath it like a drop of water in the ocean. At the same time, the horrifying energy that had filled the tornado before was now nowhere to be felt. With the bone spear gone, it took away the power of the earth with it. The hills that had sprouted lost their support immediately and crumbled into soil. Miller's body could be seen once more. He looked at the ground pensively and praised. "It seems that this is thanks to that fellow called Han too. Those from the House of Han truly dabble in some interesting cultivation techniques. Thankfully, they used some rather interesting contraptions this time. Otherwise, my trip would have been wasted." "Back underground," Gilbert said. "Han Hao, where's your weapon? Did you discard it?" He knew how important the bone spear was to him. Seeing how it was left above ground, he felt rather worried. Han Hao turned back and said, "It's coming." Before Gilbert could react, the bone spear suddenly burst out of the muddy wall beside them and landed in Han Hao's hand. "Han Hao, how many did we lose?" Ballins's expression was cold and grim. The ones that followed them weren't the only ones to leave pandemonium on the offense. There were surely more of them who didn't manage to escape Miller's slaughter, considering that even they only barely just made it. "More than 50 were killed, but most of them were mine. Most of you lots are fine, so don't worry," he replied calmly after some thought. Ballins was shocked and wondered why most of the casualties were Han Hao's, though something seemed to occur to him later. After some hesitation, he said, "Thank you." Han Hao nodded without saying much as he sped up his pace to head towards the underground palace pandemonium. After some time, they soon arrived at a large stone room within the palace. The 5 elite zombies, Stratham, Zavik, and Rose, had gathered there. All of them seemed to be in a rather foul mood. When Hao Hao arrived, he asked, "Where's Asura and the others?" "They are over at the guest room not far away from here," Stratham said. After some hesitation, he said, "What the heck is wrong with that Asura? Why didn't he make sure that he wasn't being followed and led the pursuers here? We lost quite a lot of people. Rose and Zavik only just barely made it back alive, thanks to all the digging Han Tu did." "Guest room, huh? It's within the underground palace, right?" "Yeah." Stratham found Han Hao to be reacting a little oddly. Back then, Asura had saved Pandemonium from being destroyed by Salas. And this time around, he had come with reinforcements to help them in a time of need. They should be welcomed inside, if anything. "Who was the one who brought Asura in here?" Han Hao coldly asked. "Didn't I instruct them to be left above ground before I left to seek out Gilbert and the rest?" "Asura was the one who said he wanted to come in for a look. He saved Pandemonium back then and has a good relationship with Brian, so there isn't anything inappropriate about it, right?" Phoebe said with a furrowed brow. She also found Han Hao's attitude to be a little off. "The underground palace is the home base of the House of Han. Father had said not to let outsiders inside. Let me ask you this, do you think Asura is an outsider?" Han Hao said, glaring at Phoebe coldly. He then turned to Zavik and instructed, "Go take Asura out. Either he stays somewhere above ground or the mountains where Goron and the rest are." "Isn't that really impolite to our guest?" Phoebe snapped. "There's something fishy about Asura. Given his power, there's no way he wouldn't have noticed the pursuers that were tailing him. The fact that he didn't bring it up when he met up with us shows that he's planning something." He paused to take a deep breath. Zavik, what are you waiting for? Zavik sneaked Phoebe a glance. Seeing how she was seriously contemplating Han Hao's allegations, he hesitated. He decided he would rather offend Phoebe than Han Hao and left immediately. Chapter 961. He doesn't want to GDK 961. He doesn't want to. While there were many women in the House of Han, there were few who actually had a say in matters. Phoebe and Emily were among the few. Back then, during Han Shu's absences, the two of them held quite a lot of authority. Even old Stratham and Iremike had to respect their opinions. But ever since Han Hao came about, things took a slightly different turn. Thanks to his amazing power as well as having the respect of Bollins, Sanguis, and Gilbert, he had quietly become another leader in the House of Han. Phoebe felt a little unhappy about her position being taken from her. Stratham, Bollins, and Gilbert remained quiet and watched as Zavik left, tacitly accepting Han Hao's instructions and his authority. Feeling a little annoyed, Phoebe glanced at Han Hao and said, Asura probably just failed to notice because he was worried for his subordinates, or because he was worn out from all the fighting. He couldn't have intentionally caused us trouble, right? Emily and Fanny seemed to agree with the assessment. The women usually got along well with each other, so it was natural they took the same side. Your abilities aren't anywhere close to his level yet, so it's no surprise you aren't aware of how potent the sensing abilities of an overgod is. Even if Asura had been greatly injured, his sense should have been able to pick up hidden dangers. There was no way he wouldn't have a single clue, Han Hao calmly said, not bothered by the woman's anger at all. After some consideration, he decided they shouldn't dwell on the matter. He turned to Bollins, Sanguis, and Gilbert. Gather the most core members of the household. We must remain together at times like this. Okay. Bollins immediately left to carry out that order. Han too, the 5 of you should also get ready. The moment something happens, transport everyone as quickly as possible to the control center of the formations in Pandemonium. That's where the defenses are the strongest. You will be able to utilize the Yuan energy in Pandemonium to block attacks from the outside. Even overgods will be unable to breach it as long as Pandemonium's energy reserves haven't run out yet. He continued without even so much as glancing at Phoebe. The 5 elite zombies did as they were told without any second guessing. It was as if nobody cared about Phoebe's anger. They saw Han Hao as their leader instead and did whatever they were told, ignoring the women's opinions. I worry that Zavik won't be able to handle it properly. I'll go take a look myself, Han Hao said before he turned back to Phoebe. You should also make some preparations. It's best you head to the control center immediately. While Pandemonium is huge, that is the most secure location. Han Hao immediately turned and left. I don't see the slightest hint of how he used to be back then, Lisa remarked with a bitter smile. Back during their time at Babylon Academy on the Profound Continent, Little Skeleton had been ordered by Han Shuo to enter Lisa's room during the night and give her a harsh beating. A few years back, ever since Gilbert revealed Han Hao's identity as Little Skeleton, Lisa was often reminded of that night. She had always tried to identify if Han Hao was the same as he was before, but apart from the 7 bone spurs on his back, she could no longer see anything resembling his previous self. He really transformed all right. I didn't think a necromancy creature would be able to grow to this point, Fanny said with a sigh. She had known him since he was Little Skeleton, but had never imagined things would come to pass like this. HMPH, he's arrogant and doesn't know his place. I really don't understand how Brian brought him up this way, Phoebe snapped. Ugh. Stratham, who hadn't left, felt a little awkward. He saved us, so you can trust his judgments on such matters. Phoebe, Brian treats Han Hao like his own son. I don't think he'll like how you called him an undead creature. Brian really sees him as his son? Iremike added. He suddenly seemed to have recalled something. You all have been together with Brian for such a long time, so why haven't you gotten pregnant yet? The moment he said that, the women's faces turned dark. They seemed a little uncomfortable. Stratham shot Iremike a glance as he thought, the women can't be jealous of Han Hao, right? The more he thought about it, the more plausible it sounded. They hadn't been able to give birth to an heir for the House of Han for so many years, yet Brian adopted a weirdo like Han Hao to be his son. They were sure to find this rather weird as women. Stratham suddenly awkwardly laughed when this occurred to him. The women were acting like that because of their personal issues. Don't tell me Brian is having some problems, Mike carefully asked. If the women weren't to blame for not getting pregnant, then the man surely was. The question caused Phoebe and the rest to blush. They didn't know what to say. Strathome said. In terms of age, I believe Mike and I can be your grandfathers. You can be straightforward about it. If the problem is with Brian, perhaps we can find a way to rectify it. This is no small matter as it is paramount for the House of Hand's future. We have to regard it seriously. Where is your imagination taking you? Emily snapped. She stole a glance at Strathome and Mike as she stuttered. It's just, Brian doesn't want it, he said. He said he'll only impregnate us after he deals with all the dangers and threats. The moment she said that, the two men understood the situation. Given Han Shu's power, he could easily control every single part of his body. It would certainly be child's play for him to not give any of the women a child. I see. Then I guess we'll be waiting for quite some time. When everything is over and we are safe, it should work out, Strathome said. He felt like this matter was easier to solve than he had imagined. We've been waiting a long time. It's been near a century since we came to Elysium. I wonder how long it will take to make sure all possible threats are neutralized, Phoebe complained. She seemed to be rather annoyed about that matter. We'll talk to Brian about this when he gets back. It might just work out, you know, Mike said, seeing how yearningly the women looked at him. Surprised and delighted, the three women said, Really? We'll do our best, promise. Strathome hurriedly shot Mike a sly smile. Thank you so much, the women said in unison. Mike and Strathome were their seniors, after all. If they talked to Han Shu about it, they might really change his mind. Han Shuo had been fighting through thick and thin over the years while they stayed in their rooms lonesomely, desperately wanting a child of their own to put their hopes in. Yet they couldn't bring themselves to talk to Han Shu about it, thinking he would be aware of what they wanted. They didn't expect he would leave their wish hanging for so long. We'll give it our best effort. Mike suddenly found Phoebe and the rest to be rather pitiful. They had left their families in the profound continent to come to Elysium, yet they weren't able to spend much time with him here. All of a sudden, a sharp, hissing whistle came through the holes in the walls. The women who were shyly discussing matters of procreation with the two seniors were jolted, and they put on grave faces. This whistle only sounds when the strongest of foes is approaching the underground palace. We only heard it once during a drill when the palace was first built. What's going on? Phoebe asked. Go. Head for the control center, Strathome said urgently. He knew they were facing crucial times. Nobody would dare to sound the whistle as a joke. Some kind of emergency definitely occurred in the palace. Could Han Hao have gotten it right? Lisa wondered with worry. Now's not the time to think. Protect yourselves first, Mike yelled. He pushed a button near the whistle, causing a stone door to open. One after another, they stepped through the door quickly. Zavik, retreat, Han Hao said as he stood in front of a cavern entrance with his bone spear in hand. He looked at the lightning-covered hegemon, Regis, and yelled, Asura led you here, didn't he? Where is he? Regis snickered without answering his question. He shot out a bolt of lightning that filled the whole cavern, leaving no room for Han Hao to evade. Han too, take everyone away, he yelled before he pierced the bone spear into the cavern walls, causing the earth to fall and block the way between him and Regis. At the same time, his bone spear let out a savage glow that formed into a white bone shield in front of him. Let's go, Han Hao said as he dragged Zavik with him. With Regis around, Isaiah, the hegemon of Earth, would definitely be near if not inside the underground palace as well. Han Hao knew that a dire battle awaited them, so it wasn't the best time to be messing around with Regis. Chapter 962, Underground Assault, GDK 962. Underground Assault. Regis wasn't surprised at Han Hao's reaction. Given the circumstances, retreating was simply the wisest action. What he didn't expect, however, was that Han Hao would be that decisive in leaving with Zavik without saying anything else. Almost immediately, light shone through the cracks in the blockage before it burst open, sending shrapnel flying towards the white bone shield. The beautiful shield shattered into pieces before it turned into powder. Regis's eyes shone with bright electricity. He locked onto Han Hao as he zoomed about and snickered. You have a decent reaction. You must be a talented one. I wonder how far you can run. Right after, he leaped towards Han Hao, speeding through the dark passageway like a bolt of lightning. Han Hao, who was pulling Zavik with him, felt Regis gaining on him from behind. The discomfort he was sensing was a sign that Regis had locked firmly onto his soul. Zavik, leave first. He loosened his hand before turning around and impaling his bone spear into the ground. As it sunk in, it let out a weird light. All of a sudden, the firm earth around the passageway rippled like a carpet being dusted and shot towards Regis. The energy of death caused countless sharp bone spikes to manifest around the tight passageway facing the incoming Regis. Be careful, Zavik said before he turned to run. Not bad, Han Hao, Regis praised once more. He unleashed his power fully in the tight passageway, sending lightning bolts crackling throughout as they shattered the bone spikes one after another. With a squint, he sent 2 bolts of lightning out from his eyes that snaked towards the earthen carpet, successfully neutralizing the attack. Huh! When the dust settled, Regis suddenly realized he had lost track of Han Hao completely. He really is a fast one. His mouth curved into a pensive smile as he muttered, "This isn't so bad either. It'd save me much effort if they can be dealt with all at once." As long as Han too was in the underground palace, he could make new passageways anywhere he wanted thanks to his affinity with the earth element. It wasn't a surprise he used his abilities to his full advantage to help out the others in the House of Han. Right after Zavik entered a room, a new hole suddenly appeared on the wall within it. Initially, he was suspicious of its presence, but he soon figured something out and entered it without hesitation. The moment he entered, the hole in the wall closed up, leaving it no different from before without the slightest crack to be seen. The same was happening within the underground palace, wherever there was a member of the House of Han. The moment they entered, the holes would close back up like before. Not only that, many existing holes would crumble to stop the God Hunters from pursuing them. Han too used his power in tandem with his familiarity with the layout of the underground palace to lead the household members towards the heavily defended control center. With his support, the core members of the House of Han were able to escape alive from the God Hunters' frantic pursuit. However, Han too himself had yet to enter the control center. Currently, he was hiding in a remote corner within the underground palace, doing what he could as he observed the situation through several mirrors. Apart from Han Jin, Han Huo, Han Mu, and Han Shui, he was also accompanied by Andrina, who looked somewhat doubtful. She was holding hands with Han Jin and watching Han Tu work his wonders with her crystal-like eyes. She seemed rather shocked and puzzled at how an early-stage high god like him would be so masterful with manipulating the energy of the earth, especially with how he could open up new passageways so far away. As the daughter of the goddess of destiny, Andrina had quite a deep understanding of the 12 fundamental energies, familiar with their unique properties as well as what could be achieved at any given stage. Her mother had explained much of it to her in detail. Putting aside high gods, even earth overgods like Isaiah or Asura wouldn't be able to do what Han Tu did. It was remarkable. Clutching Han Jin's hand tightly, she whispered, "Where's all his power coming from? Why does it look so weird? It's as if the earth is part of his body. This is too wondrous. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't dare believe that earth cultivators could achieve feats to this degree." Han Jin hesitated for a moment before pointing at Han Mu, Han Shui, and Han Huo. "It's not just Han Tu. The other 3 and I excel at utilizing the energies corresponding to our element. This is something our father has gifted us." "Brian, he really is?" Andrina shook her head with a resigned look. "Someone's here." Han Tu growled as he pointed at a wall nearby as if his nemesis was approaching. "He's an earth cultivator as well. He probably detected that the source of the changes happening around the underground palace came from here. If it isn't Asura, it has to be Isaiah." He exhaled and suddenly opened his eyes. "How is it?" Han Jin asked. "It's almost done. I've sent away those I need to. There are still some warriors left, but as there are too many, the best I could do was make an escape path for them leading towards Big Brother's base," he answered. "All right. Then let us go too," Han Jin said after some quick consideration. Right at that moment, Han Tu and Han Mu both felt someone was near. Even Han Jin could feel an oppressive force approaching. Either Asura or Isaiah was approaching them at full speed. As earth cultivators, even if they couldn't utilize earth energy in the way Han Tu did, the latter's blockages weren't able to stop them in the slightest. Not to mention, as Han Tu was using the energy of the earth nonstop, they were able to pinpoint his location. They really came fast. Let's go! Han Mu yelled as he took a step back. Han Tu rose and opened a hole in the wall before jumping into it. Han Jin, Han Hu, and the rest followed without hesitation before the secret chamber suddenly collapsed. The hole Han Tu had opened up closed back up as well. The earth itself began to shake heavily, accompanied by a loud rumbling from above. A figure could be seen bursting through the earth in their path till they reached the crumbling secret room. Isaiah sensed his surroundings and humphed. He swung his hands wide open, pulling apart the walls where Han Tu and the rest had entered, making a huge hole and revealing the backs of Han Tu, Han Jin, and the rest. Gotcha! He snickered and charged right in. As an expert of the over-god realm, Isaiah was definitely not one to be taken lightly. While his control over earth energy might not be as refined as the uniquely talented Han Tu, his attack power definitely far outclassed Han Tu's owing to his cultivation. With his boundless power alone, he could affect the composition of the earth to reform it with his will. While he wasn't able to become one with the earth like Han Tu could, he could use his divine energy to influence the earth itself. He managed to crack a path wide open with brute force alone. Using his divine energy, he gathered a large amount of earth element on his body, allowing each step he took to shake the whole underground palace. Oh no, Han Tu cried. The extremely dense and powerful earth element had completely altered the composition of the earth around him, filling it with Isaiah's divine energy. Han Tu had lost his control over the earth. The pathways in front of him began to shrivel up as his control over them slipped. Here I come, Andrina cried at that moment. Han Jin felt a terrifying power coming from her hand. Only the simultaneous activation of hundreds of energy towers could cause such a powerful reaction. A blinding light shot out from Andrina's diamond-like body towards the incoming Isaiah. Struck with the sudden burst of light, Isaiah winced and had no choice but to withdraw the divine energy he infused the earth with to defend against the move. He caused a firm wall to form in front of him. The clash caused a tremor so huge that everyone in the underground palace could feel it, especially from the dust and rocks that fell from above. Great, Han Tu said with joy. He noticed that Isaiah's energy was gone from the earth around him. A pathway opened up in front of him once more, and he and the rest charged in quickly. Knowing that a powerful cultivator like Isaiah was right behind them, the rest didn't dally and ran as fast as they could. Before Isaiah could react, they were already quite far off. Soon, the 5 elite zombies and Andrina passed through the barrier and reached the control center, which was a wide, underground secret chamber. Above them was the round monolith engraved with the cauldron's outline. The monolith could not only gather elemental energy from the environment, it could also collect the souls of those who died in pandemonium. Why did you pull me away so hurriedly? It's just Isaiah, I'm not afraid of him, Andrina complained. Han Jin smiled awkwardly and said, I was just worried you would be in danger. Hearing that caused her to smile sweetly. With this precious thing over here, even Isaiah can't take me on. Surprised, Han Jin asked, then can it be used to kill Isaiah? If so, let's go back and get rid of him. I can only use it to keep myself alive. It can't kill him, Andrina said, shaking her head. My mother doesn't let me kill people for no good reason. Had she given me the Mirror of Destiny, however, I would have been able to kill him. The Mirror of Destiny. The divine weapon of the Goddess of Destiny? Stratham exclaimed. He wondered what kind of chaos Andrina could usher in if she really wielded the mirror. Who else isn't here yet? Han Hao asked Phoebe with a furrowed brow. After all they had experienced, Phoebe, Emily, and the other women no longer blamed Han Hao for being too cautious, knowing that if not for his swift reaction, asking Han Tu to evacuate everyone, many of them would have been dead by now. Phoebe looked around the control room with a thoughtful expression before she said, everyone that came from the profound continent should be here. All right. Han Hao turned to the 5 elite zombies and said, seal the entrance. The 5 of them immediately used their elemental powers to seal the walls. Colorful energies radiated from their bodies before seeping into the walls around them. The room rumbled and creaked as they worked away, as if a huge mechanism was being activated. At the same time, A portion of the Yuan energy from the Sky Annihilation Formation gushed towards their secret chamber as all sorts of defensive formations manifested on the walls. Daka, who had been trapped within the aforementioned formation, noticed the change. While the pressure on him had lightened considerably, it would still take him some time before he could emerge from it. Chapter 963. Imprisonment. Chapter 963. Imprisonment. In the control center, the members of the House of Han banded together to resist Regis and Isaiah's persecution. The 5 elite zombies unleashed their power to gather the energy from the Sky Annihilation Formation to where they were, using it to form the most formidable defense they could. They turned the secret chamber into an impregnable shelter that left not a seam undefended. Everyone knew that it was only a matter of time for Regis and Isaiah to make their way here. Even though they knew hiding wouldn't do them much good, they had little choice but to do so. At the very least, within this secret chamber, there was no way Regis and Isaiah would be able to break through the heavy defenses Han Xiu had so painstakingly set up. Before Han Xiu had left, he said that he would return at the soonest possible time once he dealt with his errand. As such, the rest were counting on him to return. All they had to do was to hold out until he did. Han Xiu had told them before that within Pandemonium, his power would be greatly boosted. No matter what kind of edict or energy the Overgod cultivated, if they didn't have a quintessence, they wouldn't be his match in his domain. Brian will definitely return before they break the defenses, Emily said with confidence. Don't worry. Even if Father isn't able to make it back in time, the 5 of us will be able to hold on for some amount of time if we give it our all to operate the penta-elemental undead formation, Han Jin said with a relaxing smile, comforting the nervous ones among them. If I use my treasure, I will be able to fend off one Overgod at least. I can promise you that they would be completely preoccupied with me, Andrina said in a relaxed smile while clasping Han Jin's hand tightly. It seemed that her mind wasn't dwelling on the danger they were in at all. Hearing all that, the expressions on the others' faces relaxed considerably. They no longer spoke of much dread and instead turned their discussions on when Han Xiu would return, as well as how close they had cut at moments before they reached the control center. Han Hao didn't say much during this time. The rest had already considered him their main pillar of support. It was thanks to his judgment that Han too was notified in time to transport the core members of the House of Han to a safe zone under such dangerous circumstances. Let's not be too optimistic yet. We need to be prepared for the worst that can come, Han Hao said calmly. He turned to Andrina and said, currently, there are 7 Overgods in Pandemonium. While Dagmar, Acer, and Daka are currently temporarily restrained, once Miller figures out what's going on in Pandemonium and saves them, they will number 7 Overgods, Asura included. I worry that the defenses in this room won't hold out for too long. Once he said that, the others' expressions changed once more at the realization of the number of terrifying enemies that were currently in Pandemonium. However, apart from Miller, Isaiah, and Regis, as well as the trapped Daka, Dagmar, and Acer, Asura was still unaccounted for. Any one of the 7 Overgods were formidable foes. If they didn't work together, the secret chamber might yet hold out for quite some time. But if they did, their terrifying combined force was hard to even conceive of. No matter how confident they were about Han Xiu, they didn't really think the defenses he laid would be able to take the combined assault of 7 Overgods. What do we do, big brother? Han Jin asked. I'm still thinking. Han Hao slowly sat down with his brows furrowed, thinking in silence. Within the underground palace, Regis, Isaiah, and their subordinates wiped out the House of Han warriors whenever they came across them and continued towards the direction of the secret chamber within which Han Hao and the others hid. So far, only the core members of the House of Han were allowed into the underground palace, apart from a small number of guards who served as messengers. As such, Isaiah and the others didn't run into many people apart from those from the profound continent. Regis and Isaiah searched through a whole area and only managed to kill a few dozen guards. They were quite curious why the powerful House of Han only had so few guards. Little did they know, most of the guards resided within the mountains outside of Pandemonium. Thanks to the crisis they were facing, Han Hao and the rest had already sent word out to them before they retreated to the reinforced room. The warriors in the mountains had retreated even further through the paths opened up by Han Jin, where it would be difficult for Regis and Isaiah to detect. Currently, the two just encountered Miller. Regis smilingly asked, "Let me guess he brought you here?" Miller laughed and nodded. "That's right. How are things here? The core members should have gathered together. Hee, that saves us trouble from having to hunt each of them down separately." Isaiah pointed above him and said, "They're there. The more defenses there are, the more likely they are to reside in that direction. Daka, Dagmar, and Aser are all in Pandemonium as well. Asura told me about it before he led me here. He said it was the three that told him about the news," Miller praised. "If I hadn't seen it myself, I wouldn't have believed there were so many traps in this place that could even keep those three caught up. It truly is wondrous." "Yeah. Thankfully, we snuck in by pretending to be Asura's men. Otherwise, we might have been trapped like Daka and the others. This Brian really is quite the amazing figure," Regis said. "Speaking of them, what should we do about Daka, Dagmar, and Aser?" Miller said to Isaiah, who had planned the whole operation with Asura. The rest now followed the two's lead. "What does it have to do with us?" Isaiah said. "They fell into the traps of their own accord. We didn't lure them there on anything. We are under no obligation to save them." Miller and Regis locked eyes and laughed, agreeing tacitly with Isaiah's decision. "Let's go to where they're hiding. Remember, we can't kill anyone before Brian shows up. Pandemonium is far too interesting. In the future, we will be the ones to control this place, so we need to force Brian to reveal all its secrets to us before we wipe him out," Isaiah said. Naturally, Miller and Regis laughed heartily. The reason they were so careful and meticulous when dealing with Pandemonium was the various amazing defenses it had that could even entrap three powerful overgods like Dagmar, Daka, and Aser. In their eyes, this little remote base was more valuable than the prosperous Omphalos. The way they saw it, the Godhunter Alliance will succeed in their invasion of the Fringe. Before the battle even ended, they were already thinking about how they could split the territory. In the near future, the Fringe would be split among the 12 hegemons of the Alliance. The alliance was by no means tight-knit, for it was but an alliance of convenience rather than mutual conviction. As such, the heavily defended Pandemonium was highly sought after. With it, they would be able to afford offending other factions of the alliance without any worry for retaliation, so taking Pandemonium was a top priority. Soon, the three of them arrived outside the secret chamber. Colorful lights seeped out of the walls. Upon closer inspection, the wall seemed to have a crystalline structure and didn't resemble Earth at all. Strands of mystical energies flowed through the patterns on the wall, giving off a repulsive impression. The moment the three of them approached the room, they felt a gentle force pushing them away from it. Even overgods like them couldn't help but take a few steps back, which only served to fuel their excitement. "It's mysterious, all right. Asura really wasn't lying," Isaiah said with a face filled with excitement. "It's no wonder he decided to sell Brian out and work with us. I believe he's been pining after this location for quite a while now. People are greedy by nature. Anyone who has seen the wonders in here would want to have it all for themselves." "It truly is arcane," Regis said, as he carefully sensed the energies infused in the wall. Impatiently, he said, "I can't wait. Let me give it a try." Isaiah and Miller smiled at each other before taking a few steps back to give Regis the space to test it out. Bolts of lightning accumulated into a thick body of electricity before Regis sent it smashing against the colorful wall. A loud rumbling could be heard as the power of lightning dispersed without a trace. "Amazing," Regis cried. He felt that the strike, which contained 80% of his power, had only given the wall a slight dent before it proceeded to recover without a single scratch. "It truly is surprising," Miller agreed. His eyes flashed as he summoned a gigantic blade of wind and sent it at the wall. With a loud click, the blade he formed from the wind element and his divine power disintegrated. There is a mystical power in the wall that can disrupt the structure of the elements. That Brian really is an unparalleled genius. I really don't know where he learned how to manipulate such unheard of energies," Miller said thoughtfully after his attempt. "Haha, according to the intel we received, he will be returning soon. With a hidden pawn like Asura and the members of the House of Hands still here, we can toy with him slowly. After we extract all the secrets about Pandemonium from him, Daka and the rest won't be able to do anything about it even if they make it out," Isaiah exclaimed. Pandemonium was truly filled with wonders. He was ecstatic at the notion that it would all soon be his. "Come, let the three of us give it a try. No matter what kind of defense, it has to be sustained by energy. I believe it won't hold as long as we keep attacking it," Miller said with a serious look. It was common knowledge since time immemorial that any kind of barrier or seal needed to have some kind of energy source to remain operational. These could come from energy crystals from energy towers, or the divine power or elements that the deployer of the barrier infused beforehand. Any kind of energy could be used to fuel barriers. But no matter how powerful, each strike the barrier took would sap away at its energy reserves. The moment it was all drained, the barrier would crumble no matter how powerful it was. Miller and the rest naturally understood all this and made their preparations. They took turns battering the wall with strikes of lightning, earth, and wind. Phoebe, Emily, Stratham, and the others within the barrier felt the whole room shake from the strikes. The booming was so loud that they could almost physically feel it. However, the secret chamber had been gathering natural energy from the environment for years. The defenses were as strong as they were rumored to be. The wall wasn't broken through even after Miller, Isaiah, and Regis launched their 30th attack. The three of them looked at the crystalline wall with disbelief. They didn't think that 10 strikes from each of them, all over gods, were still not enough to crush the wall. "Stop attacking," someone called out when the three were still deliberating whether they should continue. Asura soon emerged from the earth and continued his explanation. "The harder you hit, the more the energy that's keeping Daka and the rest trapped will be transferred over. If you go on, they will be able to escape. If that happens, we won't be able to keep Pandemonium for ourselves." "How's this happening?" Isaiah asked, stunned. "I felt a flow of energy clearly from above coming towards this location. As your attacks intensified, the flow also quickened." "I am certain of this," Asura pressed. The three immediately stopped attacking, now even more awed by Pandemonium's mysteries. "We must prepare to put up a show. Brian will be coming back here any moment now," Asura said, seeing that they've stopped. He seemed to be filled to the brim with confidence. Chapter 964, that was a decent show. GDK 964. That was a decent show after a few days of rushing. Han Shuo and Wasir finally reached a mountain ranged some tens of kilometers away from Pandemonium. Han Shuo looked in Pandemonium's direction and grimaced when he got to know that something had occurred there. As he had a hand in making the formations there himself, he knew their functions and effects well. He could easily feel the abnormal flow of energy from far away. There were strong Yuan energy waves around the Sky Annihilation Formation, as well as the secret control chamber. The activation of the former was a sign that a terrifying foe had entered Pandemonium, whereas the latter was a sign that the House of Han members had retreated into the secret chamber due to some extraordinary danger. There was no good reason for the demonic barrier of the secret chamber to activate otherwise. Immediately, he accelerated even more towards Pandemonium. "Brian, is there a problem?" Wasir could easily tell something was off about him. His query caused Han Shuo to slow down slightly. After looking at the energies near Pandemonium again, he took a deep breath to regulate himself, calming his panicking mind. With his mind and soul now still and calm, some thoughts flashed through his mind. Something definitely happened at Pandemonium, but the powerful defensive formations I've set up at the secret chamber are still operating. That means the last line of defense is yet to be breached, he explained calmly, no longer in a rush back. "I'm sure Daka and the rest entered Pandemonium. However, there is no way they'd be able to barge through all the defensive formations there in such a short time. There must be some other force that is forcing my people to flee to the central control chamber, so something is off." He of all people knew the power of the defenses best. Not to mention, he had tested out Daka and the rest's power during the battle at Misty Sea, and didn't think that they would be able to breach all the defenses in such a short time. It was because he was at least that confident about the defenses that he dared to leave for Glacial Peak to save Wasir. "Perhaps some other enemy infiltrated the place," Wasir said, given that he believed what Han Shuo said about the defenses of Pandemonium. "That shouldn't be possible. Nobody can enter Pandemonium that easily unless they're one of us." I suppose we'll see the truth once we get there. Han Xiu nodded and was just about to do as Wazir said. All of a sudden, he felt a slight pulse coming from the distance. Immediately, he sent a weak strand of his consciousness out, emanating soul undulations from his body. "Who are you trying to contact?" Wazir asked. The undulations emanating from Han Xiu's body were really subtle. He wouldn't have noticed it if he were leaning directly against Han Xiu. Being a powerful overgod, Wazir knew that it must be some kind of communication technique that relied on two people agreeing on what wavelengths or other features of the undulations to focus on to be able to send information through wide distances. "You shall see in a second," Han Xiu said as he motioned for Wazir to come to a corner of the mountains nearby. Wazir wondered why Han Xiu seemed completely unhurried despite something going on in Pandemonium and tried to guess the person he was trying to contact. Did he set up some other pawn amongst Daka, Dagmar, and Acer? Why would he have anything to do with the three of them? Just as he let his imagination run wild, a weak light shot out from the dark clouds before landing in front of Han Xiu. It looked like the figure of a person. "Salas, Wazir!" The two called out to each other as if they were facing off their nemesis. Ice and lightning energy filled the surroundings as if they would clash immediately. "We're all allies," Han Xiu said, stopping them from acting rashly by charging between them. "Stay calm, we're allies." Both Salas and Wazir weren't aware that they would be working with each other and had almost got into a fight. "Out of everyone I could have guessed, you weren't even on the list," Wazir said, his cold expression melting into a plain smile. "Brian, you even dragged Salas down. I'm astonished. You truly are terrifying." Han Xiu had defeated Salas and took his place in the fringe, ruining his prospects there. Their grudge should have been irreconcilable by all accounts. Yet, they had actually been working together secretly. If Wazir hadn't seen it himself, he wouldn't have believed it even if others brought him proof. "I'm also quite surprised. You're someone who wouldn't even submit to Tyre, yet why would you leave Glacial Peak to come here?" Salas looked at Wazir oddly before turning to Han Xiu. "It's no wonder you were able to firm your hold in the fringe. It's only after today that I'm truly convinced of your abilities." Now, the two sovereigns of the fringe expressed their admiration for Han Xiu at the same time. "Let's not dwell on this," Han Xiu said, not letting it get to him. They had to deal with Pandemonium first. "Salas, you've been monitoring Daka the whole time, right? What happened?" As he spoke, Han Xiu sent some demon generals into Pandemonium. However, what they saw wasn't enough to inform him about what truly happened there, so he still needed Salas' input. First, Daka, Dagmar, and Acer went into Pandemonium. The three moved as I had predicted and got trapped like you said they would. However, you might not have realized it, but after Daka, Dagmar and Acer arrived, Miller, Isaiah, and Regis came to Pandemonium. "What's going on?" Han Xiu was beyond shocked. "I didn't see it with my own eyes, but I can be certain that Isaiah and the rest entered the underground palace in Pandemonium through a direct path. I bet you wouldn't be able to guess who led them into the underground palace." "It's definitely Asura," Han Xiu snapped. Regis, Isaiah, and Miller were targeting Asura to begin with, so Asura definitely had a part in their appearance here. Given Pandemonium's defenses, they wouldn't be able to enter without Asura leading the way. When he said that, Salas' expression turned grim. "You were able to figure it out after all. I guess you have long put up your guard against Asura." Dagmar, Daka, Acer, Isaiah, Miller, Regis, and Asura. There are 7 overgods within. Han Xiu's expression grew grave. "We should come up with something together. This battle will not be an easy one. Thankfully, Pandemonium is my turf, otherwise we wouldn't even stand a chance." Daka, Dagmar, and Acer are still trapped since Isaiah and the rest didn't free them. "The only ones we have to take on are Asura, Isaiah, Miller, and Regis," Salas said. "Then it'll be much easier for us to act." Han Xiu relaxed and pondered. "The two of you shouldn't show up yet. Let me go take a look. I believe Asura still doesn't know that I'm already aware of what's happening and will try to backstab me later. I'll let him do what he wants." After their discussion, it was decided that Wazir and Salas would remain in hiding while Han Xiu entered Pandemonium alone. "He's here," Asura cried. He finally returned. Isaiah and the rest were overjoyed. They had been waiting so long just for the master of the place to show up to hand them the secrets of everything in Pandemonium. That way, they could finally take it over for good. He definitely doesn't suspect me yet, Asura said. We should put up a convincing show. As long as I can catch him off guard, I'll be able to maim him. After that, the three of you will swoop in and will completely dominate him. Later, by blackmailing him using his wives and friends, we'll be able to make him spill all his secrets. Then, what are we waiting for? Isaiah said. Asura left immediately and injured himself lightly, trying to look like he was escaping something. Meanwhile, Isaiah, Miller, and Regis tagged along and appeared as if they were about to strike Asura down. That's a pretty convincing show, I'll give them that. Han Shu snickered in his mind and willed a grand formation in Pandemonium to start operating. The formation immediately moved to where Isaiah was and enveloped Asura within it. Hey, Asura, the hegemon of darkness, Aser, called out. He had been trapped within it for a whole day and noticed someone else appeared next to him, though he didn't expect it to be one of the 5 sovereigns. Asura's face was one of doubt. Why are you here? I was going to ask you the same thing, Aser smirked before he turned to attack him. As far as he was aware, Asura was there to help Han Shuo, so he had to strike first for the advantage. Chapter 965. Who calls the shots? GDK 965. Who calls the shots? Asura was so shocked that he couldn't find the words. Even if he were to reveal to Aser that he was joining hands with Isaiah and the others, and even if Aser believed it, there was no guarantee that Aser might cease attacking. The Godhunter Alliance wasn't a united group. Isaiah definitely didn't get along with Daka too. He was feeling a little troubled, not knowing how exactly he had accidentally fallen into the barrier that was keeping Aser trapped. No matter how he tried to recall it, he just couldn't figure it out. Aser was cornering him, so he couldn't even try to escape from the demonic formation. All around them, every once in a while, the stone towers would shoot out beams which would numb their limbs. They would fail to properly dodge each other's and suffer injuries. It only took a single false step for Asura to fall into so much trouble. All of Asura's preparations had gone to waste. By the time Isaiah, Regis, and Miller reached this place and noticed he was missing, there was no way they would be able to find him even with their senses. Let's head back, Isaiah said, noticing that something was off. Regis and Miller locked eyes and nodded. Without a single word, the 3 of them who had planned to fight Han Shuo with Asura hurriedly turned back to head towards the secret chamber with the colorful walls. They knew that as long as they could defend that location, there were no tricks Han Shuo could use to get his family out. That way, they could be sure Han Shuo would do what they wished. Given the 3 of their powers combined, they were confident they would be able to capture Han Shuo even without Asura's backstabbing. Soon, they returned to the secret chamber. Now we won't fear even if he comes. Isaiah's mouth curved into a confident smirk. We don't have to fight him outside. We've seen what kind of trouble Asura got into just now. There must be some other hazards too. Let's just wait here instead until he comes. Regis and Miller smiled without the slightest trace of nervousness. The way they saw it, everything was still under control. Father is here, Han Hao said agitatedly from within the secret chamber. The chamber was defended by layer after layer of protective seals. The walls contained an odd energy that could not only deflect most attacks from gods, as well as prevent any soul senses from seeping through. As a result, the 5 elite zombies whose mastery over the soul was inferior to Han Hao didn't sense Han Shuo's arrival at all. They were still anxiously waiting for the moment. The defenses of the chamber were all drained to execute the penta-elemental undead formation to continue protecting the rest. However, hearing Han Hao say that caused everyone in the chamber to relax and unwind. We'll be fine now, Han Hao said, standing up as he clutched the bone spear. He turned to Andrina, who was biting into a crystal shard, and said, You can keep an overgod occupied for a short amount of time so he can't attack anyone, right? The fist-sized energy crystal was already bitten into by Andrina. She chewed the chunk in her mouth thoroughly before nodding repeatedly. Of course. Get ready. We'll go out together later, Han Hao said as he approached Han Jin and the rest. Only with the 5 of you working together can you send the 2 of us out. Listen for my signal later and send Andrina and I out as quickly as you can. I will establish contact with Father. Okay, Han Jin said, before turning to Andrina. Be careful. I'll be fine, don't worry. She rolled her eyes at Han Hao and giggled. You should be more worried about him. Hanjin smiled and said, "Big brother will be fine." Resounding laughter filled the skies as a majestic figure descended. Hanshu scanned Isaiah and the other two, who looked like they were in for a fight with a mighty foe, and smiled. "You all came all this way to Pandemonium to visit me. How touching. It's a shame I wasn't here to attend to you, so I hope you forgive the lack of hospitality." Isaiah saluted Hanshu with a smile. "You're too kind." "Well, I am quite flattered that the three of you think so highly of me." Hanshu didn't seem the least bit worried. He stood on a round platform with a diagram of the cauldron of myriad demons and felt the flow of Yuan energy in Pandemonium. Then he laughed. "Well, what do the three of you want? As long as it's something I have here, I will gladly give it to you." "Now that's more like it." Isaiah laughed heartily and looked around, before pointing at the eerie formations all over. "As long as you tell us the secrets of Pandemonium, I promise I'll send you and your family out peacefully." "Oh," Hanshu seemed stunned and troubled. "Isn't it a little too harsh to chase the lord of the house away? Brian, you no longer call the shots here. The Fringe will be the Godhunter Alliance's sooner or later. Given your talent and intelligence, you should have known to leave this place long ago. Nobody would call you a coward for it. Instead, they'll praise you for knowing how to read the signs," Miller said in a shaky voice before his body swerved. The next moment, he was some distance apart from Isaiah. Electricity crackled in Regis's eyes as he took a few steps to the left before stopping at wherever he found appropriate. Isaiah, Miller, and Regis now had Hanshu surrounded. Though the three hadn't attacked yet, they already had him locked on. As long as Hanshu refused, he would be bombarded to hell and back. Naturally, Miller and Regis's change in position didn't escape Hanshu's notice. Unlike what the three of them were expecting, however, Hanshu retained his smile despite being surrounded. He didn't try to move away immediately or do anything to the effect of breaking out of their encirclement. Miller and Regis found that a little odd. Upon deeper thought, they suddenly realized that Hanshu's reaction was a sign that he had chosen submission instead to ensure that his family survived. Isaiah looked quietly at Hanshu. Seeing that he didn't attack them and even settle down in the middle of the three, he relaxed, thinking that Hanshu had made the right choice. But it was right at that moment that without any warning, Hanshu suddenly fought back. Before the smile on Isaiah's face receded, a gigantic palm appeared over the heads of the three of them. The hill-sized palm was so huge that even the lines looked like deep crevices. The killing intent the palm radiated was so terrifying that it could make some people cower and prostrate themselves from the fear it induced. A tearing sound over their heads could be heard as the palms came pressing down, encompassing the whole area. "Darn," Regis cursed as he retreated. Isaiah and Miller also noticed that Hanshu was definitely hostile to them. Feeling the pressure coming from above, they didn't stay and stubbornly take the attack, choosing instead to evade like Regis had done. In but an instant, their encirclement of Hanshu had broken apart. "I'll show you who calls the shots here." Hanshu stood rooted to the ground like a mountain as he laughed and watched the three frantically retreat. All of a sudden, the gigantic palms split into three, chasing after each one of the three. Shocked, they felt a strong danger coming from Hanshu. Despite standing there without making a single move, he was controlling the three palms like they were his own appendages. The palms homed in on each one of them, no matter how hard they tried to lose them. If it were elsewhere, there was no way Hanshu would be able to break out of the encirclement with a single move and drive them running into a corner. However, this was Pandemonium, a place where Hanshu knew all about, including every single nook and cranny. He was at least 3 times as powerful here than he was anywhere else. Soon after he reached the Skybreak realm, he was able to force Salas into retreat. Now that he had stabilized his realm's state and was fighting on home ground, his might wasn't something Isaiah and the others could even conceive of. "Destroy it," Isaiah yelled, causing Regis and Miller to zip to his side. The three of them attacked the gigantic palm above them together. A deep sound could be heard from within Pandemonium as Regis, Miller, and Isaiah gathered their power and slammed it into the palm. Powerful energy waves exploded outwards. Even those within the sealed barrier in the secret chamber could feel the shock waves. One of the palms disappeared, but it caused the other 2 to vanish as well. The 3 of them breathed a sigh of relief. If they couldn't dispel the attack even when they joined forces, they would immediately give up on taking Pandemonium and run as far as they could. Han Shu snickered and thought that if he didn't still need to fuel the Sky Annihilation Formation with Yuan energy to keep Daka held up, there was no way the three would be able to break the attack so easily. As expected of the three hegemons of the God Hunters. Impressive. Since that's the case, I know what to do now. All right, let us begin. Tell me what you want to know and I'll tell you all about it. Chapter 966, Real Submission. Chapter 966, Real Submission? Isaiah and the other two were shocked. They had planned to take out Han Shu at one go, but seeing him willing to negotiate all of a sudden, they were reeling from the whiplash. I was just testing the three of you to see if I had a chance in taking back Pandemonium. I've seen that you three are indeed rather powerful, so my desire to fight back has completely vanished. I'll cooperate with you properly now, Han Shu explained with a bitter look. The three gave each other odd looks. While they didn't immediately fight back at Han Shu, they didn't dare to believe him entirely either. This time around, they didn't surround him, but chose to stand against him from the same side instead. After all, he was able to break out of their encirclement so easily, so they would rather not waste their energy. Brian, you are stronger than we've expected. However, I believe you were only able to break out of encirclement by making use of the advantage afforded to you by the terrain. Isaiah said solemnly, even if you escape from our grasp, you won't be able to save your family and friends within. Tell us what we want to know, or we'll do all we can to wipe out those that are inside the secret chamber. It seems that this secret chamber shares the same power source as the trap that's keeping Daka and the other two held up. If we didn't want to negotiate with you, we'd have broken through the chamber already. If the three of them would have come out by now, then there is no way the House of Han would survive, Regis coldly said. He had been quite unhappy about the shocking attack he had just experienced. Don't force us to do that, Miller snapped. Sure. Han Shu raised both hands to show that he understood them fully. I'll do as you please, tell me. What do you want to know? What do you want to get? Seeing Han Shu so cooperative, Isaiah smiled and nodded. It's simple. We want to know everything about Pandemonium, all the seals, barriers, energy tower layouts, and how to use them. Also, tell us in detail about the three seals that are keeping Daka, Dagmar, and Acer occupied. Oh, I see. Han Shu took a deep breath and said, Sure. We're leaving the Fringe in the first place, so I have no qualms leaving Pandemonium to you. Now that's what I'm talking about. Isaiah looked to Regis and Miller, signaling them to be careful of Han Shu lest he fought back again. With their previous experience, they wouldn't trust him so easily now. As far as they were concerned, Han Shu was quite a threat to them and had the power to back it up. The slightest careless mistake could result in them being gravely hurt and disrupting their plans. Come with me then. I'll lead you to a place where you'll get to know everything, Han Shu said before he immediately walked out. Wait, Isaiah called out. When Han Shu turned back, he laughed and said, You sneaky little bastard. Do you think that we will just go where you tell us and get trapped like Daka? We'll do it here and here only. We have something that can scour your memories. Regis and Miller stared at Han Shu unmoving, constantly on their guard for a sudden, fatal strike. Oh, Han Shu smiled and nodded. Good. I wonder what you have that can scan my memories. Is it a soul sphere? Isaiah took out a fist-sized purple sphere with a smooth, jade-like surface. The sphere looked a little foggy within. Soul spheres were special items that could only be made by elite cultivators of the energy of death. Within them were strong, soul vortexes that could generate a huge force to retrieve the memories of anyone it was close to. While it could retrieve the memories, it wasn't safe to use at all. The slightest mistake could wound someone's soul and stupefy them. Han Shu's expression changed as he shook his head. That won't do. The side effects of soul spheres are too much. It's too dangerous. With you using it, I can't guarantee my safety, so I won't do it. There's no need to waste time with him, Isaiah, Regis growled as he looked at the secret chamber beneath them. Let us just break the chamber and kill them all. Who cares about Daka, Dagmar, and Acer? By the time they come out, they'll all be dead. Miller smiled and looked at Han Shu, whose expression shifted. What's the point of all this? When those three come out, you won't be able to protect your family no matter how strong you are. By then, there's no saying if you'll be able to escape Pandemonium alive. Isn't cooperating with us much better? Miller and Regis were playing the standard good cop, bad cop shtick. It seemed that their words were working. Han Xiuo's expression grimmed as the veins on his forehead pulsed. In the end, he firmed his resolve and reluctantly said, "All right, I'll do as you say. That's better." Isaiah smiled and secretly signaled Regis and Miller. Smiling and careful, he held the ball and walked to Han Xiu, constantly on guard and gradually handing it to him. After Han Xiu received the soul sphere, he seemed rather anxious and hesitant, as if there was a war going on in his mind. Moments later, he sighed deeply, as if he had let go of every shred of resistance. Here goes nothing. He held the soul sphere out in front of him before two soul beams connected with the sphere. All of a sudden, the fog in the sphere glowed eerily. Isaiah and the rest laughed out loud at the same time. "Even as powerful as you are, you have no choice but to follow suit," Regis said as he zipped in front of Han Xiu, sending out lightning bolts that formed into a net that bound him. Isaiah and Miller flanked Han Xiu in the meantime and deployed a restrictive barrier around him, completely sealing off the energy in his body. The moment the soul sphere finishes recording his memories is the moment of his death, Isaiah said with relief. "I've tinkered with it beforehand. The moment he connects with it, nobody apart from an overgod will be able to break free from the power of the soul sphere. What a shame for such a talented youth to be ruined by us." "Spare me that fake tragedy of yours," Miller said, chuckling as he looked at the waves in the sphere that represented Han Xiu's memories with satisfaction. This trip was worth it. With his memories and pandemonium, we'll be able to find out what weird energy he cultivates and make a similar place to pandemonium. They laughed heartily from their triumph. But all of a sudden, a cry could be heard from the distance. Wasier came rushing out coldly from the heavy fog. When he saw the soul sphere and the bindings on Han Xiu, he snapped, "What did you do to Brian?" "Wasier, was it?" Isaiah gleefully said, "You have no business here. If you leave now, we won't bother with you. Oh, by the way, make sure to leave Glacial Peak with your subordinates because we will be taking over this place soon enough." Miller and Regis snickered, for Wasier alone wouldn't be their match. If not for the fact that they had to pay attention to Han Xiu, they might have had Wasier stay to toy around with him first. "Wasier, where are you going?" Somebody yelled from the distance. Soon, that person was revealed to be Salaz. "Salaz, you're also a sovereign of the Fringe. Why did you help the God Hunter Alliance?" "Since when did you take me seriously?" Salaz said. "Darn it, ever since I left the Fringe, you people look like you serve the kid now. I've been operating in the Fringe for years, yet none of you cared about our old dealings at all. Since that's the case, why should I worry about you?" As he yelled, Salaz attacked Wasier without mercy. "Haha, Salaz is here too." Isaiah knew him and his dealings with Dhaka and the rest, so they weren't too shocked that he was there. Miller and Regis found it rather interesting and watched them fight. Miller asked, "Salaz, want us to give you a hand and deal with this fellow?" "I couldn't have asked for more. Darn it, Dhaka and the other bastards fell for Brian's trap, leaving everything on me. I'm breaking off from them for good. If you don't mind, I am willing to join your side to fight against Dhaka." As he said so, Salaz used his full force to push Wasier towards the three of them. Chapter 967, An Insidious Strike After Another. GDK 967. An insidious strike after another. This is just wonderful, Isaiah said. If Salaz really was to join them, they would have a much better chance facing off against the Dhaka trio. After all, the formations in Pandemonium wouldn't keep the three trapped forever, so they had to make as many preparations as they could to face him. Isaiah gestured to Regis and Miller secretly to get them to help Salaz wipe Wasier out. Even though Wasier alone was hard-pressed to interfere with their plans, they still felt a little uneasy about letting an enemy over-god roam free. Killing him would be much more preferable. "Haha, Wasier, oh, Wasier. I asked you to leave early, yet you didn't listen. Don't you cry foul later," Regis said as he suddenly charged towards Wasier like a bolt of rainbow lightning. Regis and Salaz both cultivated lightning energy. Being sandwiched between the two of them, Wasier was hard-pressed to escape. Miller was watching carefully from the sidelines, completely unhurried about joining in. Instead, he turned his gaze to the only way Wasier could possibly escape to. His cunning wit caused him to already be thinking about locking down Wasier's escape route. Wasier darted away in a panic. Being surrounded by the three, he was feeling a little anxious. The impressive frosty aura about him seemed to wane. Regis smiled even more as he started to look down on Wasir, an overgod who wasn't willing to give everything he had in a fight. Someone with an attitude like that couldn't be that powerful. The instant Regis held that thought, he no longer treated Wasir like someone on equal footing. He shot out a bolt of blinding lightning from his palm, forcing Wasir to flee helplessly. At that moment, Salas turned into a bolt of lightning and rammed into Wasir. Then, a lightning bolt wrapped around his hand pierced Wasir through the chest, causing him to spit out a torrent of blood. "Haha, I didn't think that this would ever happen to you, Wasir," Salas said, before he delivered another punch to his face, sending Wasir flying towards Regis. "Regis, send him to the afterlife." Regis figured that Wasir was already injured. The lightning sparks that crackled from his body suggested that he was injured to the point that he could no longer resist. "All right," Regis heartily agreed, thinking that Wasir wasn't any bit impressive at all for his defenses to have been breached that easily. Isaiah observed the whole battle and found it to be weird. He didn't think that Wasir wouldn't be able to take a single strike at all and fall almost immediately from Salas and Regis's teamwork. On the other hand, Miller was all smiles and had lowered his guard. Wasir no longer seemed to even be able to escape by now. At that moment, everything changed. Bone-chilling frost came sweeping from the supposedly incapacitated Wasir, immediately freezing the unprepared Regis, who was just about to launch a fatal attack. Now he was nothing but a giant statue of frost. Not good. Isaiah no longer cared about Han Shu, who was being absorbed by the soul sphere, and charged right in. Miller's expression also changed as he charged towards Regis. "Salas, you're so dead." "Hee hee," Salas snickered. All of a sudden, the bloody and battered Wasir turned around and moved out of Salas' way. A gigantic frost hammer appeared in his hand before he smashed it hard against the frozen Regis. Salas also sent a bolt of lightning, striking down from the skies at the same time onto Regis's head. Crisp sounds of Regis's bones breaking rang out as blood came spurting out of his arm and leg joints. When the ice fractured and shattered, Regis's eyes were glazed over. 2 trails of blood came streaking out of his nose onto his chest. It only took one strike for him to completely be incapacitated. "Salas, you're sick of life, aren't you?" Isaiah roared as earth energy surged into his arms, making it tons heavier in the process. He seemed just like a mountain now. "Sick of life? I think you're the one who is," Salas snapped as he turned to Wasir, who was wiping the blood off his mouth. "Who do we get first?" "Miller," Wasir said. Without the slightest hesitation, Wasir and Salas flew towards Miller. He was a wind cultivator, so his attack and evasion speed was far better than the two's. While he had reacted a little slower than Isaiah had, he was actually closing his distance with Regis faster than Isaiah. "Shameless fool, you wouldn't be able to defeat anyone without relying on sneak attacks," Miller said, before he slowed down. He decided he would let Isaiah take the brunt of their attacks first. It was plain to see that Regis only lost because of the sneak attack. Otherwise, there was no way he would so easily be knocked out of commission. Miller knew from there that the two were incredibly sneaky and wouldn't fall for the same trick again. However, something out of his expectations happened. Miller would never imagine that it was all part of a greater plan. Beneath Miller, a crack appeared on the colorful wall of the secret chamber. From it, an astrarium glowing with arcane energies shot towards Miller, immediately causing him to feel like he was standing at the very center of an infinitely wide void. It was as if his soul had lost control of his limbs. Miller was faced with the threat of his sinking soul, on top of Wasir and Salas. Knowing how dire his situation was, he gathered all the wind divine energy he had accumulated over his long years of cultivation, and speedily formed layer after layer of wind barriers around him. A bone spear shot out from the secret chamber beneath and instantly gathered every element of death in Pandemonium. At that moment, even the weakest element of death seemed like it had been infused with life, as it danced around the tip of the spear, while it pierced through the barriers Miller set up like they were nothing, before finally exposing him a bret to Salas. "Get away," Isaiah yelled as he charged towards Miller the fastest he could. Suddenly, a terrifyingly insidious force came shooting out from behind Isaiah. Shocked, he hurriedly turned back before he could save Miller. A red palm filled with killing intent came pressing down with explosive force that sent Isaiah flying. Blood gushed out of him and formed a light drizzle. How could it be? He cried in utter disbelief and terror. Han Shu was snickering in front of him, but there was another Han Shu down there, still petrified thanks to the soul sphere. Ag! Miller cried weakly as he plummeted from the skies like a deflated balloon. A hole opened up once more on the wall of the secret chamber, out of which came 3 gigantic claws of blood that gripped Regis, Isaiah, and Miller tightly. They were then stuffed into the hole in the colorful wall, mending it completely and leaving no trace of the damage that had been done to it. "And we're done," said the Han Shu that surprise attacked Isaiah before he shot out a beam towards the glowing soul sphere below. Immediately, the soul sphere shattered, letting the weird light from within to escape. The other Han Shu's eyes flashed as he opened his mouth and sucked the lights back in. Not a single bit of his memories that had been scraped from his soul was lost. After that, this body of his smiled and assimilated itself back into the main body. Isaiah, Miller, and Regis, 3 elites of the God Hunter Alliance. Han Shu laughed and looked at Han Hao, who was walking out of the secret chamber. "Since you want to take over the God Hunter Alliance, I'll keep them alive for now. After this battle is over, we'll have more than enough ways to make them submit." "Thank you, Father," Han Hao said, retrieving his bone spear. The 3 bloody hands that stuffed the 3 hegemons into the wall turned back into Yuan energy and returned to the Sky Annihilation Formation. Much of the Yuan energy from the wide secret chamber beneath also flowed back to various parts in Pandemonium, leaving only a small portion in the cells imprisoning Isaiah, Miller, and Regis. "Thanks, you two. I didn't think that you guys are so talented in this aspect. Even I almost fell for the show myself," Han Shu praised as he turned to Wasir and Salaz. Wasir seemed a little embarrassed about the praise. He pointed at Asura, who was still fighting Acer to the death, and asked, "What should we do about him?" "He's the one who deserves to die the most," Han Shu hissed. Buy Hedonist a coffee and read the next chapter in advance. Chapter 968, End It Yourself. GDK 968, End It Yourself. As Asura dealt with Acer's desperate attacks, he carefully observed the pillars near him, in fear of them emanating even more energy beams to freeze him. He was feeling utterly helpless as he wondered how in the world he fell into that area and encountered Acer in the first place. His plan to deal with Han Shuo had been completely ruined by now. The 2 of them were heavily restricted within this odd formation. As they fought to their deaths, the sky-piercing stone pillars next to them would send out beams of odd energy that would freeze anyone who was hit, causing them to be hit by the one not frozen. After a while, the evenly matched 2 were covered in wounds all over, half of them thanks to their opponent, while the other half from the beams the pillars shot out. Asura didn't want to continue fighting Acer. From the very beginning, he had been looking for a way out, but the attacks from the formation and Acer's incessant pursuit sapped all his attention. Hence, he was unable to leave even though he wanted to. "Acer, I don't want to keep fighting you. Stop pestering me," Asura said as he shot out a beam into the ground, causing a gigantic earth golem to rise and block in front of him. Acer, who was hiding in the dark, chuckled. "Asura, you are a sovereign of the Fringe and are on good terms with the owner of Pandemonium, Brian. The moment you get out, you'll join up with him to fight me. Do you think I'm an idiot?" Asura smiled bitterly and wanted to explain that he no longer had ties with Han Shuo, but felt that it wasn't too appropriate to do before he had backstabbed him properly first. Not to mention, it wasn't like Acer would believe him if he told the truth anyway, hence his hesitation. Seeing Asura stay silent, Acer intensified his attacks. The energy of darkness attempted to grab hold of Asura like tentacles. He was doing everything he could to wound Asura before leaving this darned place. Meanwhile, the ghastly pictures on the dozen pillars nearby seemed to come to life and wail from the dense negative aura, letting out an ear-piercing cry. Both of them noticed the change in the pillars and immediately grimaced. Ever since the beginning of their fight, the stone pillars had interfered but didn't seem nearly as threatening, so the 2 of them continued to fight. But now, the wailing ghost pictures seemed to be letting out an incredibly cold aura of evil, which caused Acer and Asura to shudder from the threat. They looked at each other, seemingly having picked up on something, and immediately backed off from one another without continuing their fight. Soon, a long shadow emerged behind one of the pillars. The energy the pillars gave off seemed to be attracted by something and gathered on that blurry shadow. "Great, you're finally here," Asura exclaimed with joy. "It's great that you're fine. I was under pursuit from Isaiah and the rest and had to retreat here. Little did I know I would fall into this place and encounter this fellow." He knew that person was Han Shuo. Asur's expression changed from the implication. He knew he was in deep trouble for having to deal with both the master of the place and Asura at the same time. As expected, the figure revealed himself to be Han Shuo. "Asura, are you all right?" he asked, looking worried as he did so. Asura was obviously happy about Han Shuo's apparent attitude, thinking that his whole shtick hadn't been exposed yet. "I'm fine, you came at just the right time. Let's wipe Asura out together." "That was exactly what I was planning to do," he said as he charged towards Asur, who was hiding in darkness. The beams of light the pillars shot out were like sharp weapons that tore through everything that stood in their way. Even Asur's divinity domain of darkness was torn open from the blasts, exposing his body within. Asura was growing even more elated. He looked at Han Shuo with a well-concealed malicious intent. "Coming?" Asura laughed loudly as he swerved, causing the sands on the ground to gather to him. Now he was as heavy as a mountain as he approached Asur domineeringly. Asur sighed at his bad luck and predicament. If he wasn't in the darned formation, he could have had a chance to escape. He knew how hard it was to leave given his experience, and that he wouldn't be able to do it without sufficient time. He watched as Asura and Han Shuo approached him from front and back. He then abandoned every lingering thought and turned to Han Shuo all of a sudden. Having fought Asura for quite some time, he knew the rough extent of his abilities. He believed he would be able to take Asura's strike. Han Shuo, however, was far more terrifying, and he wasn't sure he would be able to take the hit. "Haha, Asur, you should have known this would happen from the day you wanted to wipe Pandemonium out," Han Shuo said as he suddenly disappeared. Asur noticed that he could no longer sense Han Shuo's presence, causing him to panic and give up on attacking, choosing instead to surround himself with darkness once more. A thud could be heard from behind him, followed by an ear-piercing cry. "Brian, why did you attack me?" Asura was covered in blood. Asur was stunned. He watched as Asura bled out and turned to the smiling Han Shuo, completely flabbergasted. A weird energy swam about in Asura's body, causing countless explosions in the process. Eventually, blood seeped out of all of Asura's orifices. He desperately avoided Han Shuo's attacks as he cursed the unfair treatment he had gotten. "Asura, I've always respected you as a guide, yet you didn't know your place." Han Shuo's expression was one of utter coldness. "You dared to bring Isaiah, Regis, and Miller into Pandemonium, so you should have seen this coming. Hee, I just did what you wanted to do to me all along." You knew," Han Shuo nodded. "You don't have to keep hoping for Isaiah and the rest to save you. They can't even save themselves." "Impossible," Asura cried in a high-pitched voice, his wounds making him far more distraught compared to his usual calm demeanor. "There's no way you'll be able to hold off the three of them. I guess there's nothing else for us to say." Han Shuo sighed. "Asura, you've helped me before, so I don't want to kill you myself. You better end it yourself." "Ha, end it myself? Brian, do you really think everything is under your control? Oh, is it not?" Han Shuo smirked and looked at Asur, who was trying to bolt away. "Are you talking about him? Haha, do you think he can help you?" As he spoke, two more figures appeared from behind two pillars, namely Wasir and Salaz. The moment they appeared, Asura's face turned ashen. Wasir and Salaz. "Brian, oh Brian, you truly are ruthless. I didn't think you'd not only work with Wasir, but also that crook Salaz." Asur stared at Salaz with disbelief. Why are you helping him?" Even though he wasn't from the fringe, he knew that Salaz held a huge grudge against Han Shuo. Otherwise, Daka, Dagmar, and Asur wouldn't have allowed him to join the fight against the fringe. Yet now they were standing on the same side. "Didn't you already know?" Salaz feigned surprise and mocked. "Weren't you convinced I was the one who caused you to suffer that loss at the Three Mountains? Why are you acting so shocked now?" When he said that, Asur shook with anger. "So it really was you." Back then, although they had blamed Salaz for the loss of their men, they didn't really think that he had betrayed them. "Haha, of course it was me. Otherwise, you never would have lost half your men before even entering Pandemonium." Salas laughed with utter joy as he watched the look on his face. Back then, the trio had wanted to make a scapegoat of him, but now, he was having the last laugh. Chapter 969, Death Wish. Chapter 969. Death Wish. Were he able to do it over, Acer would definitely pay any price to kill Salas instead of letting him into the God Hunter Alliance. It was a shame that it was but a helpless plea. The moment they appeared from the dark corner, he knew that there was no longer anything he could do about it. Asura was now heavily injured. Even if he could still fight, there was nothing much he could do to help. Before Hanshu came, Acer and Asura had spent too much energy fighting one another. Now that they were up against 3 people at their peak, they felt that death would be soon upon them. Any last words? Hanshu looked at Asura and decided he would not waste time talking with him anymore. By now, Asura seemed to have realized his true predicament. When he saw Hanshu about to act, he stomped to the ground and caused an earthen wall to appear. At the same time, he took out a portal scroll, intending to tear the spacetime to escape. However, Hanshu didn't act. Instead, he watched Asura mockingly as he attempted to use the scroll. The scroll shone brightly for a moment, but stopped right after before it could do anything. This! Asura truly despaired this time. His eyes now looked dead. Nobody can leave any time they want within Pandemonium without my say-so. Hanshu smiled and prepared to kill Asura himself. Wasir and Salas exchanged glances before smiling and heading for Acer. Meanwhile, within another formation, Dagmar couldn't move at all. The clouds around him were all dark and many colorful creatures combined to form a gigantic monster that danced beside him. Dagmar could see many blurry but bloody figures in his vision. They looked like dead people he knew that had returned from the dead and leapt at him, clawing away with their rotten arms incessantly. All sorts of sights manifested in his mind. He seemed to remember all of them, and now it looked utterly real to him. If he couldn't relinquish the vacant thoughts in his mind, he wouldn't be able to break free of the hallucinations. After who knows how long, Dagmar's mental state recovered. He had been feeling a little burdened by his years of mad slaughter, but he concentrated the death energy in his body into a death scythe and cut them all apart, properly dispelling his hallucinations with physical attacks. All of a sudden, a familiar figure holding a bone spear came walking out of the heavy fog. Dagmar's mouth curved into a disdained smile when he determined that it was but another illusion. Using the death scythe he had formed before, he swept it towards the approaching figure. However, something utterly weird happened. He lost control of his scythe halfway through that swipe. The death energy that formed the scythe was so chaotic that it could no longer support the sweep. Not only that, all the death energy in the surroundings no longer seemed to be attracted to Dagmar, but to that figure instead. When he realized that he had lost control of the death energy, he knew this wasn't an illusion. Han Hao, it's really you. The one wielding the bone spear was indeed Han Hao. An odd glow flashed across his eyes as one odd rune after another appeared on his irises. The irresistible force of death emanated from his bone spear. As the pure death energy that came directly from the quintessence shard washed over Dagmar, he couldn't help but want to prostrate himself in worship. Dagmar, you're no longer my match. Pledge to serve me and reveal your divine soul unprotected to me. Then I will spare you, Han Hao said. Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Dagmar was laughing so hard that tears were coming out. Pointing at Han Hao, he said, Me, submit to you, ha. On what grounds? Han Hao, you are my subordinate, my inferior, always have been, you want to take over. Well, let's see if you're capable of that or not. Back in the death domain, Han Hao had worked under Dagmar for more than 50 years. Yet now Han Hao wanted Dagmar to submit to him. That was not something the prideful Dagmar could accept. Han Hao looked Dagmar over and sighed, before nodding slightly. Let me show you then. One odd tombstone after another came out of the bone spear and levitated to Dagmar's side, invoking his desire to fight. However, he noticed that the energy of death within him was influenced by the tombstones, causing him to be unable to let out even a single ounce of it. Why did your body not have the quintessence shard back at Omphalos? He cried unyieldingly. He could tell that the tombstones had come from the quintessence shard itself. Compared to what he had experienced previously, the power of the shard now was far more mysterious and insidious. Originally, he could still resist when facing off against Han Hao, with the latter not being able to do much to him. Yet this time around, he felt totally and utterly helpless. The death energy he had cultivated over millennia wasn't of any use at all. He now knew that Han Hao had probably truly absorbed the quintessence shard, which meant that from now on, he was unparalleled when it came to controlling death energy aside from Overgod Nestor, a bearer of quintessence. Dagmar, submit to me. I will not harm even one hair on you if you do, Han Hao coldly said, seeing Dagmar so dejected. I'd rather die than submit to you. He yelled and willed the remaining death energy in his body to implode, immediately crushing his organs in the process. Then, some weird undulations came out of his divine soul, forming into dissipating lights of darkness. Dagmar knew that facing Han Hao, the bearer of a quintessence shard and fellow cultivator of death energy, he couldn't even take him down with a suicidal attack of his own. Before his attack even landed, the death energy contained within would be dissipated by the shard. Dagmar was a prideful man. Though he knew lowering his head just this once would see him spared, he still didn't do it. As someone who used to lord over Han Hao, he couldn't bear to bring himself to yield, so death was the preferable option. Sensing Dagmar's soul undulations, Han Hao knew that he was about to vanish from existence for good, something which surprised him considerably. He didn't know why Dagmar would choose death instead of submitting to him. Looking at Dagmar's corpse, his eyes glowed. After a while, he tossed a ghostly flare he summoned to the corpse and burned it to ash. Though the overgod Dagmar was now dead, his divine body still had lots of uses. His bones could be used to make even stronger bone spears or spurs, while his skull and brain could be used to make some impressive demonic artifacts. In fact, even his skin had its uses. But for some reason, he didn't harvest Dagmar's corpse and cremated him instead. He only stopped the flames when everything was reduced to ash. A simple white bone ring fell to the ground. After hesitating for a bit, he stepped forwards and picked it up. When he sent some death energy into the ring, a gigantic white bone throne appeared. Stunned, Han Hao took a deep breath and slowly sat in it. He sent some divine energy into the throne, and it moved however he willed it to. Some strange undulations came from the throne and mingled with Han Hao's soul undulations. When he sent some more death energy into it, the bone throne seemed even more terrifying than it was when Dagmar used it. It seemed to have changed after reacting to Han Hao's energy somehow. Han Hao felt that the throne was now part of his body, much like the 7 bone spurs on his back. He then stepped off the throne and looked at it as it levitated in midair. With but a thought, the throne moved and swerved in the sky like a remotely controlled drone. A smile appeared on Han Hao's face as he played with his new toy. The throne moved through the air as he willed it, gaining more and more speed. After a while, he jumped into the throne and sent more death energy into it, causing it to rev up and activate the white bone blades around the throne. From a distance, he looked like a skeletal monstrosity that was able to perform many agile offensive movements in midair. Han Hao wasn't in a rush to leave this place. He relished the sensation and had a feeling that the throne never belonged to Dagmar, for he wasn't able to use it to its full potential. However, Han Hao's own energy was able to unlock the forbidden seals on the throne and bring out even more of its mysterious functions. Chapter 970. There's no predicting fate. Chapter 970. There's no predicting fate within the Sky Annihilation Formation. Daka struggled to no end. By now, 30% of his destruction energy had been depleted thanks to the various forces that suppressed him. Though angered he was helpless against the forces within the formation and unable to break free from it at all. Not to mention, he had to constantly be on guard for the sneakier attacks. After some time, the mysterious forces in the formation seemed to be affected by some other force as it weakened. Elated, Daka used this chance to concentrate all his destruction energy into a lance which he used to pierce across the formation's bindings and broke free. Outside, the smiling Judas slowly kept a cross away. Looking at Daka, he asked, "What's wrong? Are you trapped too?" Daka's eyes shone when he saw the cross. Is that one of the 4 divine artifacts created by the god of light back then? Judas was quite surprised as he didn't expect Daka to be aware of that too. Nodding, he said, "That's right. The Holy Grail, olive branch, crucifix, and angel sculpture are indeed forged by the god of light. The olive branch is in the hands of Jayal, whereas I have the crucifix. Haha, if not for having one of the divine artifacts, even I wouldn't be able to get you out of there. Surprised, Daka shook his head with a bitter laugh. For you to possess the crucifix and not be eliminated by the god of light, Judas, you really are impressive. You flatter me too much, Judas said with a bow. Praise the god of light's bright mercy that illuminates us all. Within another formation, Han Shu's expression changed as he pursued Asura. He suddenly seemed to lag mid-flight. Han Shu's consciousness was connected with each and every formation in Pandemonium, and the changes coming from the Sky Annihilation formation didn't escape him. A sudden force had affected the yuan energy of the formation, allowing the trapped Daka to escape. At the same time, he felt another chilling aura that informed him of an approaching enemy. Before Han Shuo could take any action, the hegemon of water, Takamor, suddenly appeared. Scanning the surroundings, he smirked. Interesting. I didn't think Pandemonium would have the upper hand. When Takamor appeared, Acer, who was being pursued heavily by Wasir and Salas, immediately broke free from their encirclement in a spurt of energy. He came to Takamor's side and said, Pandemonium's far harder to handle than we thought. We must join hands to be able to wipe it out. Takamor nodded. I really didn't think that the toughest place in the fringe wouldn't be Log or Tyre's place, but rather Pandemonium. When Asura saw Takamor and Acer together, he also tried to join their side. Han Shuo's expression was grim, but he didn't stop Asura's movements, for the tens of stone pillars that were sustaining the formation began to fracture. The energy fueling the formation suddenly vanished. Daka and Judas eventually showed up. When they set sights on Han Shuo, they made sure to keep their eyes glued to him, lest he made any sudden moves. I didn't think you'd come to Pandemonium too, Han Shuo said to Takamor and Judas. Where is Log? Is Audiobook done for? Judas was wearing an old, white and tattered robe. He had a gentle look on his face, completely unlike a bloodthirsty hegemon. He smiled and answered, Audiobook is indeed done for, but that cunning Log managed to escape. What about Tyre? Han Shuo asked after some thought. Log's escape was within his predictions. Given his cunning personality, he would definitely escape without care for his subordinates if things got dangerous for him. It wasn't a huge feat for him to leave alone, given how long he had spent in Audiobook. However, Han Shuo was surprised that Judas and Takamor had come to Pandemonium instead of going to Tyre's base, which was closer. Their presence here meant that the battle against Tyre was over. Judas hesitated a moment before he said, Tyre has vanished along with his subordinates. When Balantin and Kaz reached the Shrine of Destruction, they didn't see a single god, nor Tyre. So the two of them also came. Han Shuo knew that the two of them were the fire and life hegemons who were in charge of attacking the Shrine of Destruction, which was Tyre's base of operations in the Fringe. It seemed that the two of them returned from the shrine empty-handed. While the Fringe was large, there were only 5 truly powerful factions, namely Logs, Asuras, Wasirs, Tyres, and Pandemonium. With Tyre gone missing, Log escaped, and Asura as well as Wasir being in Pandemonium, the place became the pivotal location the Godhunter Alliance had to wipe out. As such, the hegemons of the Alliance came to Pandemonium by sheer coincidence rather than planning ahead to do so. Hearing Judas's explanation, Han Shuo's heart sank. He had thought that Tyre and Log would either resist their attacks or come up with a plan. Little did he know they would run without offering any resistance and buying him any time. Han Shuo had planned to take out the Godhunter Alliance's split forces one after another. For one, the 2 hegemons that had gone to Glacial Peak had been stuffed into the spatial rift by him. They wouldn't be able to return to Elysium within thousands of years. Regis, Isaiah, and Miller, on the other hand, had been sealed in the underground secret chamber, while he was about to deal with Dagmar, Daka, and Acer. If he had just a little bit more time,